I was a promiscuous princess. Yet I was skinned alive by my concubine. On the day I died, everyone cheered with glee. Only my husband, with whom I had always been at odds, went gray overnight, weeping tears of blood. Later, Xiashirian avenged me by carrying my coffin, killing the new king, and slaughtering all 108 spectators who had witnessed my execution. In this new life, I regret everything. I clung to his sleeve, but Xiashirian prized my fingers apart one by one. Princess, I already have someone I love. Please behave yourself. Chapter 1. If the princess did not hear me clearly, I can repeat myself. Please, behave yourself. Xiashirian emphasized the last two words with a slight bite. I couldn't believe my eyes and almost used both hands and feet to pull him. Or rather, I hugged him. Han Zhong, let go of me. What are you doing? My father's angry voice echoed from behind. But I didn't care about anything else. Looking at Xiashirian in front of me, I silently made up my mind. This time, no matter what happens, I will hold on to Xiashirian. Just like this. I won't let him go again. Most importantly, I still want to fulfill those unfinished wishes. No matter how difficult it is, I will give it my all. If possible, I will repay every bit of pain inflicted upon me. Only then will I have truly lived up to my new life. But the love in Xiashirian's eyes had vanished. The gentle face looking at me held no trace of a smile. Instead, there was a faint hint of disgust. In his eyes, I saw my own panicked and helpless reflection. No. Even if you say it 100 times. This time, I won't let go. I had finally lived again. After all that, I had finally seen him again. How could I just give up like this? Xiashirian seemed helpless. Because his sleeve was being held by me, his body had to step back. As if he was also repelled by my touch. He was polite yet cold and distant. My beloved is a petty and crybaby. Princess, you're pulling me like this. When I return, she'll probably cause a scene with me for a long time. Please, princess, spare me. After speaking, Xiashirian coldly stared at me. Seeing that I didn't move, he finally lost all patience and prized my fingers open one by one. He was so strong. The pain made tears stream down my face. Xiashirian actually has someone he loves. Who is she? A lump formed in my throat. We had been married for 3 years. Though we were supposed to be bedmates, I knew nothing about his likes or dislikes. Back then, I was stripped naked by Pei Jiangzhao and left to die in a pitiful state. I became a wandering ghost, mocked by the cold stares of the common folk. During those years drifting in the air, I finally saw who Xiashirian truly was. I couldn't accept it and continued to ask. When did you start liking someone else? I pressed further. Who is the person you like? Xiashirian paused. This seems unrelated to the princess. I stared at his tightly pursed lips and forced a smile. Why is it none of your business? This princess has set her sights on you. Under the wide sleeves of my robe, I clenched my fists. Xiashirian, you must marry me. The eldest princess is the most beautiful woman in the capital. With stunning looks, a fondness for men, and a promiscuous nature. In my previous life, whenever the common folk spoke of me, these were the words they used. At that time, Xiashirian had passed the imperial examinations 3 times in a row, was exceptionally handsome, and was the talk of the capital. The emperor had personally selected him as the top scholar in the Hall of Supreme Harmony. On that day, Xiashirian was breathtakingly beautiful, dressed in white, standing there like a celestial being descended from the heavens. He didn't wait for the imperial edict appointing him, but instead received a marriage decree. The infamous Princess Han Zheng was married off to the most sought-after young man in the capital. shattering countless young women's dreams. And Xiaoyan and I were like two strands of rope forced together. On our wedding night, Xiaoyan grabbed a pillow and moved out of my chambers. I hear there are many male companions in the princess's mansion. On long, lonely nights, those 32 fierce generals must be able to cheer you up. Your Highness, please take care of your health. He mocked me and left. I thought to myself, he's calling me shameless. That's how the feud between me and Xiaoyan began. I always thought he hated me. At that time, I never imagined that it would be this very person who would later gather my remains and carry my coffin. At the vegetable market, he held my bloodied body and wept with all his might. Xiaoyan's tears were scalding hot. Those scalding hot tears all fell onto my body. What did he say? Oh, right. With eyes full of longing, he said tenderly, "Ah Wu, my dear, please open your eyes and look at me one last time. Ah Wu, I came too late. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. He did so much for me, even going so far as to use his own heart's blood to make a soul-calling lamp, staying by my side day and night. At that time, Xiaoyan was desperate to bring me back. Now I'm back. But he's fallen in love with someone else. Xiaoyan, you must marry me," I repeated stubbornly. The crowd erupted in chaos. "If you won't marry me, I'll take any girl you like and bring her into the princess's mansion to keep her by my side forever. If you won't marry me, you'll never marry her either." Xiaoyan's expression turned ugly. "Your Highness, we've never even met before. Must we go this far? In this life?" He seemed to hate me even more. My father, unable to bear it any longer, shouted loudly to stop this farce. My hands dropped limply. As I was led back to my seat by the palace attendants, I heard my father sigh softly from his seat at the head of the table. I had originally intended to use this palace banquet to announce the marriage of Princess Han Zhang. However, Han Zhang behaved improperly after drinking, which has truly disappointed me. They say that daughters grow up and cannot be kept. It seems that my beloved daughter indeed needs to be entrusted to you sooner. What? I suddenly looked up. Who does my father want me to marry? I saw him fix his gaze on a person. That person was kneeling on the ground. When I raised my head again, I finally saw his face clearly. The son of a general, Page Yangzhao. In my previous life, in the eyes of others, he had severed ties with his family to become a concubine in the princess's mansion for my sake. But later, it was he who rebelled, killed my entire family with his own hands, and flayed my skin. I lowered my head. My hands clenched the cup tightly, trembling slightly. I was afraid. So, where did things go wrong? Why was I being forced to marry Page Yangzhao instead of Xiaoyan? When Page Yangzhao looked at me, his eyes were filled with joy, as if he loved me deeply. He acted so convincingly that even my father was deceived. Page Yangzhao knelt on the ground and continued, "This servant has long admired the princess. I beg the emperor to grant this union." Page Yangzhao's biological mother was a foreigner, so he was born with exceptionally beautiful heterochromatic eyes. During the years he spent in the princess's mansion, he deceived me with his tragic background and subservient demeanor. It wasn't until I was on my deathbed that Page Yangzhao whispered the truth into my ear. He had been using my name in secret to recruit soldiers and build his power, all to control me. He had planted a love potion in me. The reason I came to develop feelings for him over time was due to the effects of that poison. I stared intently at the person on the ground. After a long moment, I laughed softly. "How much do you admire me, Mr. Pei? Prove it to me now." I suddenly grabbed the sword from the guard beside me and threw it at Page Yangzhao. "I've been needing a human skin to use as painting paper lately. Why don't you come up with a solution?" He stood there stunned, clearly not expecting such a sudden move from me. A human skin painting paper. Back when Page Yangzhou was overseeing an execution, he had said the same thing. He claimed I was the most beautiful woman in the capital, and thus my skin was to be used to paint his map of the empire, which he would bestow upon the people of the realm. However, Page Yangzhou had me skinned alive merely to extract the poisonous insects, fearing they would turn on him. Now, as I watched the sweat trickle down his forehead, seeing his face once more, my stomach churned uncontrollably. I just wanted to vomit. That searing hatred, mingled with a lingering fear, twisted my chest into a painful knot. Page Yangzhou lowered his eyes and replied in a hoarse voice, "If the princess wishes to use human skin for her painting, I am willing to sacrifice my life." After speaking, he reached out to pick up the knife on the ground. I lifted my skirt, shifted my delicate shoes, and stepped on his slender hand. "Wait. Don't rush." Page Yangzhou was always so insincere. He knew I wouldn't dare harm him in front of everyone. But I wouldn't let him have his way. "Look up." His face, as fair as jade, lifted, and his cat-like eyes met mine. I reached out a hand, lifted Page Yangzhou's chin, and furrowed my brows slightly. "You are indeed quite handsome. But in my mansion, all the concubines are of unparalleled beauty, and many possess extraordinary skills. You think you can become a concubine just by relying on your face? That's far too easy." Page Yangzhou's expression changed slightly. As he looked at me in shock and confusion, I remained calm. "It seems you won't be able to become a face keeper. If you want to be a foreign slave, that might work." The atmosphere froze completely, and someone couldn't help but suck in a breath of air. A foreign slave. Among the noble sons and grandsons of the capital, foreign slaves were highly sought after, worth a fortune. Possessing such a rare slave was a symbol of status and prestige. And I was the eldest daughter of the current emperor, the first princess in history to be exempted from kneeling and given her own palace. The love and power my father had bestowed upon me made me indifferent to proving anything in such a manner. But this time, I smiled sweetly, waiting for Page Yangzhou's response. Seeing him remain silent, I patted his shoulder. "All right. I was just joking. Young Master Pei wouldn't be angry. Would you?" He spoke in a calm voice, turning away, and replied, "Not at all." Trampling on his dignity was truly amusing. I felt a surge of satisfaction and turned away gracefully. But I unexpectedly collided with Xiaoxian's probing gaze. After the palace banquet dispersed, my father summoned me to the side hall. "Oh, you were far too reckless today. Recently, you brought several male favorites to the princess's mansion, and it's already spread throughout the capital. Page Yangzhou is a fine young man, suitable for you, and he doesn't mind your reputation. What exactly are you dissatisfied with? Why did you make him so embarrassed? When did you set your sights on that newly appointed top scholar? After today's commotion, it's likely to become public knowledge, which will be even worse for your reputation." "Reputation?" I stroked my bracelet. "Your humble daughter only knows that if one has someone they truly love, they should boldly pursue them. If he has no feelings for me, I will let him go." The emperor leaned back in his chair and sighed heavily. I remained expressionless, tugging at the corners of my mouth. Why did I take concubines? Do you still remember? Someone in court had submitted a petition urging the prohibition of women initiating marriage or divorce proposals. To my surprise, this proposal gained support. In my previous life, on the eve of the decree's implementation, I rushed to the palace to oppose it. My father scolded me for meddling in state affairs and even struck me in the face with ink. At that moment, I realized that the favor my father had shown me was merely confined to the title of princess. The slightest transgression beyond my station would cause that fragile favor to fade away like ink splashed on my face, leaving no place to hide. After being released from house arrest, I openly selected 8 male attendants at the South Wind Pavilion and brought them back to the princess's mansion. My father, the emperor, angrily declared, "You are my daughter, you must set an example for all women in the realm. At home, obey your father; after marriage, obey your husband." Whether in the imperial family or among the common people, this has been the principle since ancient times. This is called the 3 bonds and 5 constants. I have already been overly indulgent toward you, but my favoritism is not meant for you to repeatedly defy me. I stood tall, my gaze never wavering. Your indulgence has raised a docile daughter who follows the rules, and you want her to become the most chaste woman in the world, living as a monument to virtue. If she dares to speak words you dislike, you pull out the moral codes to silence her. So, the 3 bonds and 5 constant virtues were written by men, yet these black and white words bind only women. Has it always been this way? Is that right? I looked at him. An endless sorrow welled up in my heart. If it weren't for this outdated nonsense, how could the Shao family's kingdom have been seized by page Yang Zhao? The emperor was so enraged that his beard trembled, pointing his finger at me. "You." Before he could finish, I stepped forward, grabbed the inkstone from the table, and smashed it against my own head. A sharp pain followed, and ink mixed with blood trickled down my forehead. My father clutched his chest, his eyes wide with horror. I threw the inkstone to the ground and spoke coldly. Xiaolu has failed to uphold the duties of a minister and disobeyed his father's orders. He deserves punishment. This time, I will not trouble you to do it yourself. As I stepped out of the palace gates, I saw Xia Shiyan, dressed in white, standing under a peach tree. He stood with his hands behind his back, as if waiting for someone, his head tilted upward, his tall, straight figure resembling a lone crane. When our eyes met, I instinctively turned away, not wanting him to see me in such a disheveled state. But he slowly raised his eyes, already having taken in my embarrassed appearance. Since that was the case, I extended my hand confidently. "Lend me your handkerchief." Xia Shiyan paused slightly. I reached forward with my hand. "Don't pretend. I know you heard everything, and I know you always keep your handkerchief in the left sleeve." He finally handed me the handkerchief. At the same time, another object was also handed over. I looked closely and saw that it was my jade sash. It must have gotten caught on him during the palace banquet. Xia Shiyan had actually come to return this to me. I covered my head with a handkerchief, walked shoulder to shoulder with him, and spoke with a hint of bitterness. You're in such a hurry to give it back to me. You must be afraid that your delicate wife at home will cry. In the capital city, I didn't even know there was a girl more precious than me. As the top scholar, associating with a woman of my reputation is truly an insult to you. I continued to speak sarcastically, but noticed a faint frown between Xia Shiyan's brows. "Your Highness is too kind. I have not married, nor do I have any engagement." He paused, as if choosing his words carefully. "Between your Highness and me, we are sovereign and subject. How could there be any question of wrongdoing?" I gave a faint "oh," but my heart fluttered at his words. "Have not married." He had not married. Nor did he have any engagement. Excellent. Excellent. Xia Shiyan stared at me, making me feel uneasy. Last month, I heard that someone in the court received a letter. The letter urged the ministers to jointly submit a petition to the emperor, urging him to reconsider the laws regarding women's punishment. However, only a few signed it, and the matter was quickly dismissed. Does your Highness know about this? Of course I knew, because I was the one who wrote that letter. I had intended to sign my name openly, but my personal guard pleaded with me to do so at the risk of his life. With no other choice, I had to hide my name. When the letter was returned, I glanced at it from a distance. There were only a few names on it. It felt like cold water poured over my head, instantly dousing my enthusiasm and making me feel that my stubbornness was ridiculous. Later, I threw the letter into the fire and never mentioned it again. I covered my head with a handkerchief and continued to pretend not to understand. I don't understand what you're saying. Upon hearing my denial, Xiaoyan remained silent. Suddenly, I grew suspicious. Had Xiaoyan been standing here earlier and overheard the argument between me and the emperor in the palace? Now, why had he suddenly brought up the anonymous letter? Before I could come to a conclusion, Xiaoyan stopped in his tracks. I wasn't paying attention and bumped into his back. When did he get in front of me? Even though it hurt so much I was grimacing. In front of Xiaoyan, I had to maintain the image of the most beautiful woman in the capital and force a smile through my tears. Xiaoyan's dark eyes looked at my forehead. Using just a handkerchief to stop the bleeding will easily leave a scar. The wound needs to be treated promptly, don't delay. No wonder he's so thoughtful. However, just as I was about to push open the door, Xiaoyan suddenly called out to me again. Your Highness. I didn't understand and turned back. The wind swirled around us, causing Xiaoyan's snow-white robe to flutter, making him look even more cold and aloof. He stood by the door, and when he looked at me, his eyes flickered. My name is also listed on that petition. Those casual words, each syllable, struck my heart like a hammer. Princess Hanzhong has gone mad. The news spread from the palace to every corner of the capital. On that day, my repeated harassment of Xiaoyan at the palace banquet and my relentless humiliation of Pei Jiangzhao had become the talk of the imperial capital. Not only that, everyone knew that the emperor had been so enraged by me that he fainted in the side hall, his eyes rolling back, and it took a long time to revive him by pinching his nose. I sat on the bed, listening to Aku recount everything in detail. Finally, she hesitated and said, because of this incident, the emperor even replaced the commander of the princess's palace guards. I think he probably thinks you're too troublesome, so he sent someone to keep an eye on you. Your Highness, you'd better not go out for a while. Just lie low for now. In a few days, it will be your birthday banquet. What if His Majesty? I smiled broadly. No. I haven't had enough fun yet. This is just the beginning of my new life. I changed into a bright red palace robe, the same one I wore when I was granted my title. The tall crown and wide robe, the slender waist swaying in the breeze, exuded a subtle air of solemnity. Aku, prepare the palanquin. I smiled slightly. The weather is nice today. A palace procession is just perfect. Remember to bring those 8 male attendants. Let the girls of the capital see how a woman should behave. We are not bound by those rigid moral codes. Aku found this curious and asked, then what does it depend on? It depends on one's own heart. A figure stood not far from the gates of the princess's mansion. Aku jumped in surprise and whispered. I wondered who it was. It's the new commander-in-chief. Your Highness. Please be careful with your words. Following her gaze, I saw the man standing under the eaves. His figure as straight as a pine tree. It was Xiaoyan? A hint of doubt flashed through my mind. In my previous life, Xiaoyan was the top scholar chosen in the literary exam. How could he become a military officer in this life? But whether he's a literary scholar or a military officer, it doesn't matter. This isn't just some new commander of the guards, he's clearly the prince's future husband. My eyes lit up. After the palace exam, Xiaoyan hadn't officially received his appointment yet. Becoming my commander of the guards would be perfect. I was about to walk over when I remembered something and quickly whispered to Aku. Have those 8 handsome young men get into the carriage first. I'll go talk to our future prince consort. Aku stared in disbelief. Looking around frantically, prince consort? Where? I smiled sweetly and walked towards Xiaoyan in a loud voice, you're just in time. Come with me to the imperial villa. He stared at the wound on my head that hadn't healed yet. The Eastern Imperial Villa is famous for its hot springs. Your Highness, this trip might not be appropriate. Sure enough, Xiashirian was still the same gentleman who always followed the rules and restrained himself. Why not? The Eastern Imperial Villa is warm in winter and cool in summer. I'm going there this time to have some fun with a few young men. I deliberately raised the pitch of my voice, inviting speculation. He remained silent. Xiashirian, dressed in his dark blue robe, seemed to have a hint of red at his temples. I sat in the carriage, lifted the curtain again, and called out to him softly. Mr. Xia. Xiashirian looked up, unsure of what I meant, his expression as delicate as a flower in the wind. I extended my jade-white wrist from the window and gently beckoned him with my finger. The journey is long, and it's boring to sit alone. Seeing that Xiashirian didn't move, I felt a playful urge. Why don't you come sit beside me? Xiashirian valued his reputation, and I had just behaved in a flirtatious manner. Plus I had a reputation for being attracted to men. At this moment, I was certain he wouldn't dare come over. I continued to act pitiful, wanting to see how Xiashirian's saintly facade would be torn down. Never mind. Lord Xiam must be afraid. What is the minister afraid of? He asked me in return. Xiashirian is afraid that I will devour you, and also afraid that you might fall for me. I smirked triumphantly, as if I had already won this silent battle. I saw that the dark blue curtain had been lifted, and he bent down to step into the carriage. Since it is the prince's kind intention, the minister humbly accepts the grace. Xiashirian spoke politely, his words and actions measured and proper. When he sat before me, his cold eyes met mine, and I caught a faint smile within them. Your Highness, would you like me to sit closer? My face flushed. Gritting my teeth, I snapped at him. Xiashirian, you hypocrite. The lavishly decorated carriage passed through the most bustling streets of the capital city. Upon arriving at the Eastern Palace, I left only one attendant to accompany me to the library. The attendant stayed for a long time. After he left, I was still lost in my thoughts, thinking and writing on a piece of paper. Suddenly, there was a noise at the door. I cried out in my heart. No! Just as I was about to press down on the xian paper on the table, I saw Xiaoxuan walking in. He was carrying a lamp and a roll of books, as if he had come to return them. We were caught off guard and collided head-on. That's right. He had become my head of the guards. The previous head of the guards was illiterate. But Xiashirian was different. He loved reading. How could I have forgotten that? What if he discovered something and reported it to the emperor? I was filled with regret and wanted to find an excuse to scold him and send him away. Xiashirian's gaze swept over the object pressed beneath my wide sleeves. The young gentleman who just came out of your study was the youngest son of the Guo family from back then. How much does Xiashirian really know? Although he signed the anonymous letter, what if he's changed his mind later? No one can be certain whether Xiashirian was sent by my father to spy on me. I dared not think further, feeling my heart race with fear. Back then, the Guo clan was the most skilled craftsmen in the capital for repairing houses. But they were exiled for siding with the wrong faction, leaving only Guizibin, who was enslaved. The 8 concubines in your palace, none of them are likely to be innocent. His pitch-black pupils were bottomless. The secret I had hidden for so long had already been uncovered by him. Xiashirian held the lamp and walked toward me slowly. I exhaled a breath of stale air, swept my wide sleeves aside, and still covered the table. On the table lay the blueprints that Guizibin had drawn in my study that day. This was also the true reason I had come to the Imperial Palace today. I had always wanted to turn the Imperial Palace into an academy for women to study and learn to read. But in my previous life, I was bewitched by Pei Jiangzhao's charms, and spent the latter half of my life in a daze. unable to fulfill this lifelong wish before I died. My eyes glowed coldly as I raised the wolf hairbrush in my hand. The back of the brush pressed against Xiaoshuyan's throat, keeping us apart and preventing him from advancing. Xiaoshuyan, I command you to stop. I do like you. But if you dare take another step forward, I will kill you as well. His figure indeed froze in place. The dim light from the lamp in Xiaoshuyan's hand reflected in his pupils. He suddenly softened his tone, a hint of helplessness flickering between his brows. Your Highness, you seem to have misunderstood something. I am not the Emperor's man. This task was something I requested of my own accord. What? My hands froze. Xiaoshuyan raised his eyes, which shone brighter than the lamp in his hand. I know the path you want to take, but I always feel that someone should walk beside you, lighting the way. You. Before I could finish, I remembered the petition letter I had burned. The first name written there began with Xia, the handwriting as elegant as a dragon in flight. Now that the emperor has just recovered from his illness, the crown prince is incompetent, and factions within the court are stirring. The petition letter stated that in this world, many matters should not be judged by gender, but by talent and virtue. So, Your Highness, will you still insist on doing what you want? His voice was firm. I had known Xiaoshuyan for 2 lifetimes, and now as a ghost, I had lingered by his side for years. Only at this moment did I realize that Xiaoshuyan was the only one who truly understood me. Xiaoshuyan, remember every word you said to me today. He slowly relaxed his brows and smiled. Through fire and water, I will never betray you. My heart settled heavily with that promise, leaving no room for doubt. Xiaoshuyan rarely showed such an expression in front of me. It turns out he looks so handsome when he smiles. But an inappropriate thought popped into my mind. Did he always smile like this in front of the person he loved? This thought felt like a thorn piercing my heart, causing it to ache. I suddenly wanted to tell Xiaoshuyan everything that had happened between us, and about the years I spent wandering by his side, how he used his own blood to summon my soul, staying awake day and night, longing to meet me again. Now I'm back. But this stingy guy has forgotten me completely. Only I am left with regret and unfulfilled love, caught off guard and abandoned. Xiaoshuyan, in the years I didn't look back, did you also look at me like this? On the way back, I was unusually silent. Your Highness? Xiaoshuyan was explaining his thoughts on the blueprint to me, but when he noticed my distracted state, he stopped speaking. I propped my chin up, looking at him listlessly. He froze for a moment. Is something wrong? Your Highness? For some reason, I felt annoyed. This man kept calling me Your Highness, which sounded so irritating. From now on, there's no need to be so formal and private. Stop calling me Your Highness or Your Princess. Just call me Awu. Xiaoshuyan's brows furrowed slightly. That's against the rules. I knew he'd bring that up. I crossed my arms and glared at him coldly. In the princess's mansion, I am the rule. You must follow me, that's the proper etiquette. You must call me that today. Xiaoshuyan hesitated for a moment before finally managing to say, "You, Your Highness." I was thoroughly satisfied and asked again, "Xiaoshuyan, what do you usually call the woman you love?" Though I knew this question might be asking for trouble, I couldn't resist prying. Xiaoshuyan fell silent. I've never called her that. I finally felt a bit relieved. I continued in a sarcastic tone, I wonder if our virtuous and proper Mr. Xia has ever heard this old saying, men aren't bad. Women don't love them. If you keep following the rules like this, women will just find you boring. If you just call her by her name without any emotion, of course she won't acknowledge you. The next moment, Xiaoshuyan's words truly surprised me. But she refuses to see me. How am I supposed to call her? What did you say? I widened my eyes in surprise. On that day at the palace banquet, you clearly said, when I was 16, I accidentally fell into the water and was unconscious for several days. After waking up, I would often have strange dreams. Xiashirian let his hands hang by his sides as he mentioned an old story. I often dreamed of a girl whose face I couldn't see, and I didn't know her name. Just as I was about to speak, the carriage suddenly stopped. I almost fell off the bed, and the neighing of the horses echoed through the night sky. Your Highness! It's Pei Xiagongzi! Aku exclaimed. I managed to steady myself. Today is quite eventful. Everything that was supposed to happen and everything that wasn't supposed to happen has all come together. I stepped down from the carriage. Pei Jiangzhao was kneeling on the ground, dressed in servant's clothes. Although it was already night, there were still occasional passers-by at the entrance of the princess's mansion. People glanced over curiously. I walked up to Pei Jiangzhao and felt a mix of emotions. He actually came to me on his own? Young Master Pei. I thought I made myself clear that day. Yes. Pei Jiangzhao looked at me with those seductive eyes. This time, I have severed all ties with my family and am here to serve as a slave in the mansion. Princess, please have mercy on me. How familiar this scene felt. Sure enough, Pei Jiangzhao was ruthless toward himself. Whether as my concubine or a slave, he seemed to have calculated that I would become the stepping stone for his ascent to the throne. Once again disguising himself to approach me, I ran my hand over the long sword at my waist, a mocking smile spreading across my face. Xiashirian stepped forward, drew his sword, and pressed it against Pei Jiangzhao's shoulder. He knew how much I despised Pei Jiangzhao. I gently pressed down on Xiashirian's arm and shook my head. I had planned to deal with the more urgent matter first before addressing him. Since Pei Jiangzhao wanted to play this game, I would oblige. I bent down. This time, my fingers teasingly brushed against the corner of Pei Jiangzhao's eyes, which already held a hint of charm. Young Master Pei has come all this way, abandoning his family and home, willing to give up everything for me. I am deeply moved. Aku, carry young Master Pei into the mansion. Grant him the title of cover star. I was merely reminding you. Those who are not of our clan have different hearts. Moreover, the Pei family holds great power. Your Highness should be cautious. I walked around Xiashirian, then tiptoed to sniff him. Sure enough, he reeked of alcohol. Xiashirian, are you drinking wine or vinegar? I blurted out the question, and Xiashirian didn't move. He lowered his eyelids, deliberately hiding all his emotions. Your Highness, I don't understand what you're saying. I leaned closer and continued. Tell me, if the girl in your dream knew you had feelings for me, would she still cry? Under my relentless questioning, Xiashirian looked somewhat flustered. He grabbed my wrist, emanating a dangerous aura. The faint blush on his face was unclear whether it was from drunkenness or something else. If your Highness has no intentions, there's no need to tease me like this. His tone carried a hint of anger. I leaned close to his ear and gently wrapped my arms around his waist. I used to be a petty person with a poor tolerance for alcohol. Once, when I was drunk, I took advantage of someone and told them they weren't allowed to fall for anyone else. At the time, they agreed, but I broke my promise. Xiashirian suddenly raised his eyes. Later, I died at the vegetable market, only to realize all the missed opportunities. It was all because someone interfered. And I, Xiao Lu, have always loved only that one person. The usually cold-hearted man finally showed a hint of emotion. Ah Wu? Xiashirian moved his lips but gripped my hand even tighter. I took a deep breath, holding back the tears welling up in my eyes. You said you don't believe in past lives. But the person you met twice was me. Xiashirian. I'm sorry. At the birthday banquet of Princess Han Zheng, an incident occurred that shook the capital. Since the emperor and the princess had a falling out that day, he had been seeking an opportunity to mend their relationship and had personally visited the princess's mansion. But no one could have anticipated what would happen. While the emperor was resting after drinking, Page Yang Zhao, the illegitimate son of General Pei, dared to climb onto the emperor's bed. By the time the emperor came to his senses, Page Yang Zhao had already taken off half of his pants. Not only that, but the guards found poisonous insects on his body. It is said that the emperor was furious, kicking Page Yang Zhao until his face was covered in blood, and also punished General Pei for failing to discipline his son properly. The use of witchcraft is a serious offense, and once discovered, it can only be punished severely. Before being dragged away, Page Yang Zhao seemed to have gone mad. He kept shouting about rebirth and muttering nonsense like "Where did I go wrong? And I am the emperor." Princess Xiao Lu intervened, proposing that the illegitimate son of the Pei family be imprisoned in the princess's mansion to suppress this royal scandal, with the princess's mansion taking full responsibility for the matter. The emperor agreed. Later, no one ever saw the young master of the Pei family again. Only occasionally did the nearby villagers mention the princess's secluded courtyard, where strange things seemed to happen. For instance, the empty courtyard, which was clearly uninhabited, would emit screams in the dead of night. As for whether it was a person or a ghost, who could say for sure? However, using Page Yang Zhao as a lead, Xiashirian took the opportunity to follow the trail and uncover the Pei family's long-buried accomplices. He spent an entire year investigating, from embezzlement and bribery to the abduction of innocent women, from Yuzhou to Fengzhou. The case involved numerous people, with over 200 suspects implicated. The once arrogant old ministers in the court were forced to tone down their arrogance and behave themselves once again. Led by Xiashirian, the new faction in the court launched a purge. Additionally, the emperor abolished the few laws proposed by General Pei and his faction that imposed harsh punishments on women, announcing it to the entire realm. At around the same time, the princess's mansion posted an announcement stating that they would recruit women from the capital to study at the Dongshan Academy. The people of the capital were filled with emotion and applauded enthusiastically. They said, "This day has finally come." The day Xiashirian was granted the title of Right Counselor was a fine day. Yet the Honorable Xia still wore the simple attire of a military commander, standing firmly in the hall. This position is something others would beg for. Yet you refuse it? The emperor sat at the head of the table, his expression complex. Xiashirian shook his head and bowed to the emperor. "Your servant is humbled. I have another request." The emperor stroked his beard and suddenly understood what Xiashirian sought. Once one becomes too high in rank, one can no longer be a prince consort. The man before him clearly desired the eldest princess. Sure enough, the figure as graceful as a crane spoke earnestly. "Your servant has long been enamored with Princess Hanzhong. I implore your majesty to grant my wish. If you ever regret this decision, it will be too late." The emperor seemed to remind him casually, while his gaze drifted toward a screen inside the hall. "I have no regrets." Xiashirian relaxed his brows and bowed in gratitude. His response was firm and resolute. Behind the screen inside the hall, a woman in plain official robes, who had been eavesdropping, quietly curled the corners of her mouth. "Oh, are you satisfied?" The emperor's voice carried a hint of laughter. The woman behind the screen had eyes as beautiful as a painting, and every smile was breathtaking. Such grace and beauty could only belong to Xiao Lu. Now, she was also the first female official in the court. Although her position was lowly, she was in charge of matters related to the imperial examinations for women, which was a suitable role for her. Perhaps one day, women across the realm would no longer be confined to their small worlds. They could ride horses in vibrant attire, roam freely, or ignore worldly conventions and shine in their own ways. They would no longer be someone's wife or daughter. They would use their own names to write their own stories. That day would surely come. Xiao Lu smiled faintly. She only looked at the figure on the ground, as graceful as a pine tree and a crane. Just then, Xiaoshuyan raised his eyes to look at her. She suddenly remembered that last night, Xiaoshuyan had rushed back to the capital, and the first thing he did was to come to the princess's mansion. Through the gate, he spoke softly of his longing. "Oh, I miss you," he also said. "From now on, you just focus on soaring high. I will be the wind beneath your wings, your ladder to the clouds. This time, nothing will ever separate us again. Ah woo. Let's get married." Epilogue. Many years later, Xiaoshuyan finally remembered everything. And Xiao Lu also remembered why Xiaoshuyan had called her a petty crybaby at the palace banquet back then. In a previous life, one late night, Xiao Lu was in a foul mood, drinking alone in the courtyard. Drunk, she stumbled into Xiaoshuyan's bedroom. Though he was already asleep, she dragged him out of bed. Xiao Lu, slurring her words, demanded to know why he hated her so much and had humiliated her on their wedding night. 32 fierce generals? She muttered to herself, growing angrier with each word. Where did that rumor come from? There are only 9 concubines in my mansion. Xiaoshuyan stared at her, thinking she was just drunk and causing a scene. But Xiao Lu was truly furious. She had genuinely wanted to get along with him. She thought that this empty princess's mansion might also feel like a home. What had Xiaoshuyan said back then? He stood in the courtyard, bathed in the scattered light of stars and moon, speaking coldly. "Your Highness is sentimental, your heart can be divided among many. But I am different from you. In this lifetime, I will only be devoted to one person." Xiao Lu thought. Apart from the newly arrived page Yang Zhao, who was all show and no substance, the other 8, though from declining families, were all skilled individuals. She had gone to great lengths to find them and had no choice but to send them to the South Wind Pavilion under the pretext of being male favorites. Now she had to endure her own prince consort's subtle insults. It was truly infuriating. "You don't know anything. Who do I like?" She blushed fiercely and managed to force out only those harsh words. It must be said that she had once harbored some admiration for Xiaoshuyan. After all, he was intelligent, handsome, and a man of integrity. The only flaw was that he never paid her any attention. Now, it's all gone to waste. However, after hearing Xiao Lu's words, Xiaoshuyan seemed to be in a much better mood. If your heart belongs only to me, then I will never love anyone else in this lifetime. Oh, are you willing or not?" He finally didn't call her princess, but instead gently called her Au. This bookworm, when it comes to sweet talk, he's actually quite charming. Xiao Lu thought to herself. Is this Xiaoshuyan making the first move? However, this deal seems quite fair. But she insisted on putting on an act. "Then I'll give you some time to think it over. I'll give you my answer tomorrow morning. But if I wake up late and you don't wait for me, you'll have to keep liking me and not change your mind. Otherwise, I'll come here every day and cry." Xiao Lu thought it through simply. She'd go back, get a good night's sleep, and come see this bookworm tomorrow. Otherwise, she'd be agreeing to something without a second thought. And he might not take her seriously later. It's just one night, Xiaoshuyan wouldn't be that impatient. Would he? All right. I agree. Xiaoshuyan smiled slightly, biting his lip. Xiao Lu was satisfied and stumbled out the door. Before leaving, she turned around. Xiaoshuyan's clear eyes fell upon her. He was watching her back. It seemed like this gentle, silent action had been repeated many times before. At that moment, the princess who had never known what it meant to be moved suddenly felt her face grow hot. Taking advantage of the night, she fled in panic. Upon returning to her chambers, Xiaolu collapsed onto the bed, drunk beyond consciousness. However, the person who had been waiting inside the curtains reached out and gently undid her buttons. Later. The story that should have had a happy ending never had a later. Xiashirian bit down on the last two words. If you meet me again, would you fall in love with me once more? Ao's muffled voice came from beneath the blankets. Xiashirian knew she must have remembered those unhappy things again. I would. Ao. The man gently tucked the corner of her blanket around her, and a kiss landed on her cheek. If I were to meet you 100 times, I would fall for you 100 times over.